Welcome to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. If this information interests you, please press the like and subscribe button and press the bell for notifications. Well, good day to you. It is November the 8th. I keep trying to say October the 8th, and not that it would change the situation, but I don't want anybody thinking that we have an extra month this year, because I'm sure everyone's, if you're like most people, you're wanting to roll the dice on 2021 and see what that has to offer, because you pretty much, have taken the tour of 2020, and it's like, you know what, I really kind of want to just see what else is out there. But anyway, I do thank you for checking this channel out. And of course, if you have heard this information for the first time on this channel, I want to welcome and thank you as well. And it looks like there's a lot of new people that have been checking out this channel, so it's great to see. I do want to say a little bit, what we talk about here on this channel is always for your consideration and your consideration only. But we talk about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, his priorities for humanity, what it means for humanity, and really, in a nutshell, his priority is, above all, we need to create true and lasting peace. But the question has always been, how do we do this? Well, what Maitreya would say, without sharing there could be no justice, without justice there could be no peace, without peace there can be no future for any one of us. So if you turn off the channel right now, that's the most important thing that you have to hopefully hear, or hopefully it gets to you some kind of way, because that's the most important thing. All right, now, of course, what drives this channel and inspires me to put up videos, sometimes on a weekly basis, that kind of stuff, is the questions and comments that you guys put forth. And the more number of questions, the quicker I put the videos up. And even with the comments coming, it helps us to spark conversation and hopefully spark more questions, so we can really, all of us together, look at this information and really come to the truth of it for ourselves. All right. And again, I always want to thank you if you have asked questions in the past or commented in the past. Even if I don't agree with what you have to say, I really do respect and admire you for at least coming to this channel and checking it out. If you've listened to these videos and you haven't posted anything, that's fine too. I really want to thank you too for checking this channel out, and listen to as many videos as you want, come and go as you please. But if you find that you're still a little lost about what we're talking about who and what Maitreya is, or even what a master is, or you want to know more about the history of it, a couple things you can do. One, you can check out the video I posted in the early part of October. Actually, it was on October the 9th. It was entitled, "What If I Told You the Christ Has Already Returned?" That's one video, kind of gives a background information and a history about the masters, who and what a master is, who and what Maitreya is, and really what it means for us and what is hopefully going to be happening in the very near future. The other thing you can do, within the description of each video are links from various sources that you can check out that have different angles on this topic. So you can kind of look at it like that. All right, so let's get on into it, because I do have some questions and some comments to cover. So the first comment was the last one to come in, actually, that I'll talk about. It says, "Time to make America great again, now that the narcissist has been fired." Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and love that comment right there. I appreciate that. A couple things about this. Okay, now, I know there are people who listen to this information who perhaps see this information differently than I do and are very supportive of Donald Trump. And I'm not trying to gloat, and I'm not trying to create enemies with you. But I just want to share a different side of this, because a couple things. One, I don't know if you've seen this on the news, and there's a park that's literally right down the street from where I live, and there was several hundred people celebrating the outcome of the election peacefully. There was not anger. There was not the call for any, legal justice. It was like a sigh of relief, and from what I could tell. And even the news reports of the thousands of people that were in New York and in D.C. and even around the world, that were celebrating the election. There's something to that. And those people who, stand against the left or the progressive movement really should take note, because it was it's been thus far a very, very peaceful, joyous celebration. And nobody's blaming anybody else. Nobody's calling anybody names. It's just been peaceful, So these are Maitreya's people. They want something better. And they want it for everybody. They don't just want it for the select few. And you can tell that's the joy that they're experiencing. And you might not get it now. Hopefully you'll see it eventually. But that's really what it is. And Maitreya knows within the hearts of all of us, even those who fight tooth and nail to keep this system in place, that's not serving the needs of everybody, really have within them the longing for unity and the longing for oneness. And he said it many times. And that's the reality of the situation, And we have a brother, we have a mentor, we have a teacher who can speak heart to heart to even those people to help them see the truth that's already latent within their own hearts. So anyway, something to think about. But the other thing I wanted to mention too, and I didn't really, I've hinted at it, but I didn't really talk about it because I'm going to kind of combine that comment about Trump and somebody saying Maitreya is the Antichrist. Okay, so let's take a look at it from this standpoint, and then I'll get into the question here. Okay, so first, about Trump, kind of tying it into the Antichrist. No, I'm not saying Trump is the Antichrist, but what I'm saying is this. Of course, the religious fundamentalist will view somebody who, is speaking about somebody else in a way that is contrary to their own beliefs of being the Christ, would assume, wrongfully, but assume that that person is against Christ and is thus, therefore, the Antichrist. Now, in the Bible, the Antichrist is written in there like an individual, but I don't think that it's meant to be interpreted as an individual. And let me explain. Okay, so I've used this example a couple times. Jesus said to his disciples, I come not to bring peace, but to bring a sword, right? To set father against son, mother against daughter, brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor, or something like that. And for the life of me, I can't remember the verse, but you've heard that before, I'm sure, right? And the question that I always ask people is he talking about a physical sword of a certain length and holding that sword? And when he holds that sword and he brings that sword, then the divisions happen. Or is it a symbol for something? Well, esoterically, that symbol is what the Christ was talking about, was the temporary initial response of humanity to the Lord of Love's energy. That it brings out in the person who and what they really are, so they can deal with it and see for themselves, and they don't suppress it. So it exacerbates the personality of the groups of people. So if you're very reactionary and conservative, you're going to be more reactionary and more conservative. If you're progressive, you're going to be more progressive and liberal and so forth. And that's what we're seeing in the political arena, but it's happening everywhere. So that is the energy, but it's a temporary thing, and eventually it will bring that unity and that synthesis. It might not seem like it now, but that energy works within the law of cause and effect, which is equal and opposite reaction. That's why they're doing it like that. Now, that's the esoteric view of that sword. It's the same thing with the Antichrist. Esoterically, the view of the Antichrist in the Bible was never intended to be written in there or be interpreted as an individual. It was a symbol of the energy. It's a divine energy, but it's an energy that and it has a purpose, but it's a dark energy and it's very nefarious. So it's kind of like a dual-edged sword, almost like a sword, right? But it's sent out into the world to destroy the old ways of thinking and relating, to allow new ways of thinking and relating to flourish. It happened during the time of Nero. It was released, and that was one of the beasts in the Bible that John was referring to in Revelation. And then it was re-released again during, I think it was 1918 to the 40s, during the times of World War I and World War II, from the master's point of view, which was one war. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, because it also goes into the whole thing about Trump. And let me just, and just hear me out on this if you can. Okay, so that energy of the Antichrist was sent out through the Axis powers of Germany, the Nazis in Germany, the fascists in Japan, and the fascists in Italy, excuse me, and the militarists in Japan around the emperor. There was those three groups of people created a triangle, and it's the science of triangles, because the triangle creates a potency of energy that one or two groups wouldn't be able to do. And so that 3 points of darkness during World War I and World War II was very, very strong. And the Allied powers, which were also 3, Britain, England, and Russia, right, counteracted that. And they were working with the forces of light. It was a very dramatic battle of the forces of light, or the forces of evolution versus the forces of darkness and the forces of involution. And it was also another way of looking at it as good versus evil. It was pretty clear, right, who was on what side. Again, the division. There was a very clear division on who and what everybody was. Okay, so according to the masters, that energy was never intended to be destroyed. It was just that energy was, and the forces behind that, the dark forces or the forces of involution, were not going to be destroyed. They have a purpose on this planet, but it was looking like they were going to be relegated to their own domain, and they would not have the influence over humanity the way that they did during that time. Unfortunately, historically, what happened is right after World War II, the Allies actually, under the inspiration of the forces of darkness, created the state of Israel and pushed all the Palestinians off their land. Now, there are a lot of people who really support Israel and the state of Israel, and I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm just telling you from the point of view of the masters, it was a nefarious plan to move millions of Palestinians off their homeland that they've lived on for generations, and put just a few 100,000 Jewish people on their state and create all these settlements and so forth. And that's what's created the problem in that region. But anyway, that was what that kept the door from totally shutting on them. Now, that 3 points of darkness resurfaced again. One in the Zionist movement in Israel, the other one in the Eastern Europe around what is now the Slavic states, and then the third one formed when the Pentagon was formed in Washington. So those 3 create a slightly less, but yet still very powerful, nefarious points of light. Now, according to the masters, and this is where thanks for indulging me, because I'm about to talk about the presidents of this country, is according to the masters of wisdom, every single president since the formation of that military-industrial complex across the river from Washington, D.C., called the Pentagon, has been influenced to a greater or lesser extent by that nefarious energy. Every single one of them without exception. And there have been a lot of really great presidents, including like JFK and I know even Jimmy Carter and some of the other ones, right? But even Obama was influenced to some degree by this. So it's not a party thing, okay? Just that the Republicans seem to be more influenced by him than the Democrats. And when George W. Bush was in power, his cabinet was very, very influenced by that force. And that's the reason why it shaped their foreign policy, it shaped their policy toward our allies, it shaped everything. And that you could see the United States that had made a lot of progress in a lot of areas in terms of foreign policy, in terms of the ecological problem in the world and helping to solve that. And they took decades and took a step back that really put us back decades to where we were. And that's the evil in it, because anything that hinders the progress of humanity is evil from the point of view of the masters. So, what happened, I think, was when Bush, left office and Obama took over. Yes, he was influenced to some degree, but not to the extent that Bush was. And it was like this lifting of a weight off the shoulders of the Americans and really the world in general, because the United States really does, to some degree, run the world, right? And that's why so many countries look to the United States for, money and business, but also from our politics, because our politics affects them to a greater lesser extent. Well, anyway, like I said, this is where I'm getting into Trump. So what I think happened during the Trump administration is Trump became very, very, very influenced by this nefarious energy. And one of the things that this energy does, and these points of darkness do, is they use what a person or a group of people would think would be their greatest strength. They use it against them and to control them. It happened in Germany, and it's happened even in the United States. And the United States is a very religious country, and to a greater or lesser extent, right? I mean, we were founded by Puritans who thought that, you know, the Europeans were too much of a heathens for them, right? So they came here, right? And that's always been kind of one of the principles of the United States is we're a Christian country or this. And I think that nefarious energy under the Bush administration, especially under Trump, has used that religious fervor against their people. And that's why I think so many millions of people, even now, are still swept up into this illusion about that Trump is a demigod. And it's coming, I think it's really coming from the forces of darkness more than anything. And it's not even Trump per se. So I always kind of hesitated to say something about this, but it's just, and those people who maybe are not caught up in it can see it. And that's the reason why there's this disconnect between people. Like, how can you see somebody like him and support this person, and then other people can't, who are swept up into who he is, can't understand why those people don't see what they see. But if you look at it historically, the same thing happened with Hitler. There were just millions of Germans who were swept up into who he was. They thought he was a demigod. They thought he was God himself, you know, to some degree, and followed him right off a cliff, just like they want to do with Trump, you know. And those people who didn't see him like that, well, of course, suffered the fate, you know. But same thing. They had an enemy that they tried to unite the people against. The Trumpists have enemies all over the world. The Muslims are their enemy. Even the left, the radical left, are their enemies. The socialist radical lefts are their enemies. And they're using it to inflame their base. Now, hopefully this will remain a peaceful transition of power, but we'll see. You know, it remains to be seen. But anyway, that's my humble opinion on it. And that's the reason why over the past few months, while I had this channel up, I started talking more and more and more and more and more about my personal opinion, my criticism of Trump is I'm not really even speaking out against this country. I'm speaking out against fascism, and I'm speaking out against what I would consider to be an evil. And anytime you see that, it's your duty to speak out against it. And the one thing about this country that I think this country has been very susceptible to over the past 20 some odd years is fascism. It's swept in there because corporations are fascist states of themselves. So for a country like the United States to be run by the corporations, well, of course it will turn into fascism as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, that's my little 2 cents on it. But and that's why it ties into the Antichrist to some degree, but it's not what people think in terms of Maitreya being the Antichrist. And you'll see, you know, I mean, it's like I said, you'll see when Maitreya's out, you'll see why I've been talking about him these many years. And the love that he has, the love for those people who hate him, who want the status quo to be there, that will fight tooth and nail for it. He loves them just like he loves the progressives and those people who are undecided. He loves everybody equally. So he literally, the difference between a Christ and an ordinary master is the master manifests the love nature of God, and a Christ literally embodies the love nature of God. That is the distinction between the two. But it ties also into what we were just talking about with the Antichrist energy, ties into the question that we're left with this video is, does Maitreya have a stance on ethnic nationalism conceptually? Is he okay with an ethnic group reserving a homeland for themselves and banning significant immigration of non-members of their ethnic group to that homeland and making their group privileged in that homeland? For example, Japan currently is a sort of quasi-ethnic state in that way. Is he fine with the idea of the Japanese banning non-ethnic Japanese from immigrating in large numbers to Japan and reserving a privileged status of ethnic Japanese in their country? If there were analogous nationalisms to that in European countries like Germany or England or Ireland to keep Germany ethnically German, or England or ethnically Anglo-Saxon, or Ireland ethnically Irish would be fine with that. Okay, so now, Paul, to truly answer your question honestly, I cannot answer that one for Maitreya. And the only reason why I can't is because I've never read anything where he addressed that particular question, okay? So, if this is something that really interests you, if you get a chance when you see Maitreya in public, or if you have a chance on a radio program or an internet program or on the news or something like this, and it's a question and answer thing, and you get an answer, ask him, right? He'll tell you, right? Now, if I had to guess, and it's just a guess, okay, to answer, because I want to make sure I'm kind of answering what you're asking, is he's not against anything. So did you say it like that? Is he against, where is it? Nope, you didn't say is he against. You said, is he okay with, excuse me. It's such a hard question to answer. I would say, one, he lives and works within the law of free will. So if the country, which is autonomous, that's what they want, then there's not much he can really do. Now, whether it's a divine part of the plan of that nation to be like that is a whole other question that you would have to really ask one of the masters. Does that make sense? These masters all have, their plans go on for centuries, and sometimes even eons. So, for instance, I had talked about this before in a few videos ago, is that the three major experiments among the nations, okay, one is the United States, Britain, Russia, and now China. So, but all nations have their own part to play in the plan and all that kind of stuff. But there's three rather large experiments that the masters are doing that might help answer this question or might not. Okay, so I don't want you to feel like I didn't answer your question, because I really am trying. Okay, so no guarantees from management on this one. But anyway, the United States, the plan that the masters have for the United States, and it's already taking into effect, is that there's the mixing of the races. There will be, of course, and it's already happened, where there will be interracial marriages and interracial children and so forth. And out of that will come a whole new race of people eons from now. It's not going to be 100 years from now even, or 1,000 years. It's several thousands, tens of thousands of years from now will come this new race of humanity out of that experiment in the United States. And it's just an experiment. Okay, so it might not even work, but that's what they're looking to do. And according to Benjamin Creme, it's already started to have an effect on the look of the people of the United States, where you can start to tell somebody who's from the United States, maybe than somebody who's Eastern European. It's starting to blend to a degree, and that's the plan of that. Okay, now in England, for instance, which goes directly into what you're talking about in terms of race, the experiment that the masters have for that country is not so much the mixing of the races as the races living side by side under one nation. Now, they're not outlawing or banning interracial marriages or children. That's not at all what they're saying. It's just that's not a part of the plan like it is here in the United States. Okay? So, again, it's just the plan that the experimental plan that they have for Britain is that. Because if you look at all the nations that Britain has conquered over the centuries, and those people allowing to be able to move to, let's say, England or London, for instance, and they have all these different communities. They have the Asian community, which is where Maitreya lived for quite some time, if he's not still there now, right? Then they have this community, that community, like, China and all that, the Chinese community or whatever like that. So they have all these different areas of London, and perhaps all throughout the nation, I guess. But that's the whole plan of that, is to live side by side. And then Russia, it's not so much about a racial thing as it is in terms of a country being an umbrella over these confederate countries. So the countries are kind of autonomous to themselves, but still yet under the umbrella of one nation. And then China's it's a newer experiment, but their experiment is a totalitarianistic democracy. I mean, it kind of sounds like an oxymoron of things, but that's what that is. So the ethnicity, and the nationalism, and all that stuff, a lot of that does come from the forces of darkness. Okay, so for instance, And it's ironic that it happened in Germany, where they were trying to create the Aryan race and then exterminate the Jews out of Europe, right? Well, amongst the Jewish people, there's also this purification of trying to keep they're not a race of people, but that group of people pure in their mind, right? They don't want people marrying outside. They want, a Jewish woman to marry a Jewish man, that kind of thing, and not to go out. And there's a lot of stigma when somebody goes outside of that group to marry somebody or something like this, have kids, right? I mean, it's been like that ever since I can remember. Now, whether it's as strong as it was decades ago, I don't know, right? Probably not quite as much. There's a lot more openness in society than there was back that time. But you see what I'm saying? And then the other thing, which is kind of interesting, I was thinking about this when your question is, there was a leftist magazine in Berlin right when Hitler started taking over, and he started talking about the Aryan race being the pure race and the master race and so forth. And there was calculations that the Nazis did to people's faces to try to find out their nationality. And I don't know if you heard this, I saw this on a documentary, but anyway, the cover of this magazine, they put on the cover of this magazine a picture of Hitler. Like I said, he had just taken over, right, and was starting to really drum up the people about this. And obviously there was a fascist government, right? But anyway, there was this, like I said, this leftist magazine that came out and put his picture on there, and the title of the magazine, or the cover of the magazine was, "Hitler is a Mongol." And according to their own measurements, Hitler's face, his nationality was from Mongolia. Well, it goes without saying that those people who were running that magazine, they departed this earth quite some time ago. I mean, we can laugh about it now, but yeah, I mean, I can't imagine the bravado of somebody to do that. They obviously were not aware of what the Nazis were capable of doing. Maybe they thought that they could get away with it, but so the forces of darkness are remnants from the previous solar system when the involution was the highest form of spirituality. The Jewish people, according to the masters, are actually also they're remnants from the same solar system. So it must have been a characteristic of the same solar system is to keep national ethnicities pure, as pure as possible, right? That's not, and I guess to really answer it, to kind of tie it together in a bow, right? As much as I don't like talking about stuff like this, if I had to guess Maitreya's view on it, it's not a plan of the masters that countries keep their ethnicity pure like it is Japan's trying to do. Because I go to Japan, I've been to Japan many times, and you're right, there's not a lot of diversity of people there. You know what I'm saying? But, they also have to live within the law and allow the country to guide itself. So it's not like they can force it on somebody, a country or something like this. The country will have to kind of come to it itself. But so many countries, even the United States to some degree, is trying to keep, the foreign invasions out and keep their own purity. But it's not, I don't see that as part of the plan in that regard. Hopefully that answers your question. I didn't answer your question. I'm kidding by saying that, but I mean, you can always ask the question again if you want. But that's what I would say their view of it is. So hopefully that answers that question. And then lastly, and this is in response to, what if I told you that Christ has already returned video that I recorded on the 9th of October. Rhonda Carter put, "Sounds promising and very uplifting. So there is a possible future for humankind?" Yes, Rhonda, there is. And I will say this, I don't know if you had heard this information before you read that, but it does my heart good, because that is hands down what the reaction that I want, and I'm hoping that people have by hearing this information is, there's hope for us. Now, there's only hope for us if we start to take the advice of Maitreya, who is already speaking on TV. And it's a very simple advice, but evidently it's very hard for humanity to get its act together and do, which is share the resources of the world. That's the only thing we have to do. That's the first thing that we have. Well, the only first step that we have, the only option we have to start to generate peace on this planet. And it's not socialism from what people are thinking about. We already live in a socialist country in the United States. Make no mistake about it. So those who love the Republican Party and love Trump because they're fighting what they see as socialism, and that's socialism and evil, make no mistake about it, you are living in a socialist country. And the proof has already happened. They gave $2 trillion of government money to the people, but it was just a very, very tiny minority of rich folks that got that money. Everybody else got a little bit. And so we are living in a corporate, socialist, quasi-democratic country, republic, where we don't even have a lot to say in terms of how we govern ourselves. The elite do, and the corporations do, and then the corporations get rewarded by bailouts, which is a form of socialism. However you want to look at it, it's a form of socialism. Now, to get back to your comment, what Maitreya is talking about is sharing is something that already historically happened right after World War II with the Marshall Plan, where the United States took the excesses that they didn't need for that year and gave it freely to the European nations to help them rebuild their nations after World War II. As those nations started to rebuild their economies, rebuild their infrastructures, rebuild their cities and farms and so forth, well, then they gave the excesses that they started to create back to the United States as payment for those. And like I said in the last video, what has been the outcome of that? A more peaceful, trusting relationship with those nations. And it just happened for the briefest of times. So can you imagine what would happen globally if we did this ongoingly, ad infinitum? The fruit of the tree of sharing is peace. The fruit of conflict and war is more war, destabilizing, political structures and economic structures, and of course, the ending of life on the planet. That's the fruit of that tree. So you plant the seed of destruction and war and division. That's what you're going to get, is eventually death. Death in the meantime of all, of permanent extinction of the species, right? That's the fruit of it. The fruit of sharing is peace for everyone, every country, justice for everyone, and more importantly, a future. So hopefully that helps. You take care. Have a great day. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.